Hello, hello. We're here, episode 2 today of Backpacks and Stories with Nigel.
Hey everyone.
How you doing?
Good. Well, you want the honest answer or the classic answer? You
You
have
can
the classic answer.
you can give the honest answer.
The honest answer is I'm feeling better than
Okay.
yesterday, where I was feeling worse. So I was honestly yesterday I was like operating. I could only open my eyes like 40%. So I was literally just going around like this, and I was like, "There's just no point." Because I was in a library and it was really bright. And I went back home. I'm feeling better than yesterday, so it's a good thing, I think.
Did you still manage to have a productive day yesterday?
No,
No.
um, no, but it wasn't totally useless. But if we went from like 0 to 100, 100 being like the most productive you could ever be, I would say I was like at a 9.
9 out of 100.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, fine. We'll throw 10. We'll throw in one. So I wasn't absolutely zero, but it wasn't. I'm not gonna tell anyone I did something yesterday.
We have days like that. Everyone has days like that.
Yes.
Would Would you like to start off by introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hey everyone, my name is Nigel. I'm 22 years old. My blood type is kidding. I'm in Canada right now in Montreal because I assume you might have a pretty international audience. But I'm not from here. I'm from Malaysia, and yeah, I'm super honored to be episode 2 because if you can't come first, come second.
Well, thank you, man. It's a pleasure, and I really appreciate you being here. I always love to meet interesting and cool people, and I think we have a really good connection, and I'm looking forward to this chat that we have today.
Me too.
So you're from Kuala Lumpur, right? The
Yeah,
capital.
yeah. I mean, in the same way that people who are from the GTA would say that they're from Toronto.
Yeah, you're from the suburbs.
Yeah, kind of. Like I don't live too far away, but I definitely don't. I'm not from downtown. I'd say it takes me about 30 minutes to drive to like what everyone imagines KL to be.
Mhm.
I say KL, I mean Kuala Lumpur. We just say KL because it's faster. But yeah, I mean yeah.
Do you miss your city?
Okay, great question because it's not a simple answer that you're gonna get. Um, because I feel like in order to answer that question, I need to talk about how I um deal with missing things. Because and it might change, but at least where I'm at right now is that I don't really miss things too much. Like if I really had to just say one sentence, it'd be I don't miss Kuala Lumpur, but that's definitely not to say that I don't love it, because it's where I'm from, right? It's where I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not unhappy about that or anything. Like I love it. Um, but I don't tend to miss things, and I don't know if it's because I just don't, or I unconsciously try to make it a point not to miss things, and to I guess just live in the present or wherever I am. The only thing I can think of, well, okay, I don't miss things. I do get little bouts of like really missing stuff, but they're really rare.
Mhm.
And the things that I miss, I mean, the top three things that I could possibly miss would be um, people, food, and it's I say a mix of experience and feelings, not really places. And so if you think about it, like, yeah, if you miss someone, the world is so connected now, right? I'm chatting with you. I don't have to go to you through this freaking rain today. It's insane. I was not very happy about it, but I had an umbrella, so it's good. Um, so you kind of have people, you bring people with you everywhere you go, or you can. If you think about food, you can just cook. There are recipes online. I'm not a huge cook. I'm not a great cook at all, but I could if I wanted to make, dishes. And but the third thing I would say is the hardest to replicate, and so that's why whenever I miss things or if I get nostalgic, it's because I'm really missing the feeling of that exact moment or that exact situation. But sorry, that's a really long answer.
No, no problem. I think is you've highlighted some real points and things that I relate to too. I think if we do spend so much time missing things and people, then it is really hard to stay in the present. I think that's something that we have to deal with as immigrants and really have to try and stay on top of things, stay where we are. So you've been here for, as we were just talking about, nearly 3 years now, coming up on your 3 year anniversary
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Montreal. And have you been back in that time at all?
No, not at all. So the last time that it was on like Malaysian soil was when I left 3 years ago, or nearly 3 years ago.
Do
Yeah.
you have any pending trips?
Not at the moment. I mean the reason that I haven't been back is because of cost, really. Because I mean Malaysia's on the other side of the world, right? It's literally 12 hours, a little like 12-hour time difference. So if you there's like not really any further that you could go. Um, and it costs like a couple of thousand to go back, and I just don't have. I can't drop that.
Yeah.
And now less like more than ever I can't because I don't even have a job, unemployed. So there's just no way. Um, hopefully, I don't know. I hope I'll be able to get back soon. I do miss talking about miss. I do definitely want to see my grandparents again, which I think that's the biggest thing because um, given the fact that I haven't seen them in a long time, and the fact that they're not exactly our age, and I think there's an added like aspect there when you think about wanting to see your grandparents again, and I think that'll be the biggest thing, the biggest pull for me to go back home, and the food, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Have you found any good Malaysian restaurants here in Montreal?
Huh. No.
No.
Well, okay. No, but I can't say it's an entire no because technically we do have a bit of Malaysian food in Montreal, but I will say it's not a uniquely Malaysian restaurant. It's more of a Malaysian plus Indonesian plus Singaporean and a bit of Thai based on what I've seen. Um, from what I've heard, I've never been. From what I've heard, it's actually pretty good. And I've heard of it. I've heard of it a while back, but I I only really saw it for the first time 2 months ago. It's at Atwater Market. And when I went there, I was just surprised because there were so many people. There was like a huge queue, and apparently it's like that most of the time. Um, but I know I haven't been because there's something in me that refuses to pay $3 for a satay because God, that's like if you take into account like conversion currency, that's like 10 times, nearly 10 times the price I would pay back at home. And I'm not that desperate as of yet, so no, I haven't been.
I think, like you say as well, we are able to cook the things that we miss. So I think that does it definitely plays into it. And although I don't have the same exactly the same experience because there's not a lot of British food that I miss exactly.
Mm,
From the places that I've traveled to, especially South American cuisine, I don't want to go and pay, you know,
yeah.
$10 for an empanada or an arepa. It's just because those things are so much cheaper when you go and experience them in that place the first time.
Hmm.
But what I also wanted to mention, so going on to that, obviously Malaysian cuisine is very, very mixed because Malaysia is a melting pot of lots of different cultures.
Yes, I like this question already. Go ahead.
Um, so from my understanding, there's the biggest mix of cultures there is there's Chinese influence, there's Indian influence, there is some kind of Indonesian influence as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right. So just a tiny correction. Not exact. Well, yeah. Okay. It's just when you said Indonesian, I was like, ah, I'm gonna get attacked if I don't say something about that. Yeah. So we do have three main races in Malaysia. We have the Malays, and we have Chinese, and we have Indians. So it's like three main races. There are obviously more, but but by far, like the majority are Malays, and you have Chinese and Indians. And so that's what we grew up with in Malaysia, and I think it's really awesome. It's it's one of, I think, Malaysia's strengths, and part of its beauty is the mix of cultures that we have, and it bleeds into everything that we do, right? And I am definitely not the I unfortunately am not the I'm not representative of like the perfect Malaysian citizen. Um, but I'm still proud of it. And sorry, were you asking about like food specifically, or
No, a little bit about everything. About
yeah,
how, I mean, food definitely, but also about how everything functions, how you see the different representation of all these cultures in one place.
right? Okay, great. Yeah, it's a lot to talk about there. Um, not sure where to start, but I think it's funny because I always tell this to people who I meet outside of Malaysia is that you never really have to explain this or talk about this when you're in the country. And the first time that I had to, and that was the first time that I went, oh wow, that's kind of funny, was when I left the country and I was explaining to someone, it's like, oh, I'm from Malaysia, and then they asked me, oh, they either asked me what language we speak over there, or if people of if I look like, or if most Malaysians look the way I do. And that was the first time I went, oh wow, and I was actually at a loss for words because I had no idea how to explain it, because that wasn't something that I ever had experience explaining back at home, or so I just didn't have the language. Like it just, it made me hesitate, and I had to really think about how to explain this to people who don't understand it. And it's not like it's not crazy, right? It's not novel or it's not unique. Like there are so many places in the world where they have a similar cultural makeup, or even more diverse. As I've learned um, going out of the country and all that. Um, but I think it's beautiful, and it appears the diversity appears through our languages, our food, and I'd like to say general acceptance. Of course, if we really want to talk about it, there's a whole discussion about how that's changing, how the lines between cultures and races are either solidifying or not. Unfortunately, I mean, usually when we talk about things, it's because they're bad, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Do you, sorry, do you feel like there's, yeah, on that regard, do you feel like there is some degree of separation, segregation, not segregation in terms of is put in by the government, but in terms of the people themselves self-segregate. They kind of stick to their heritage. Is it very mixed, or do you feel like you still go and there's strong communities within those backgrounds, those heritages?
yeah, for sure. And this is something where I realize that my viewpoint is pretty different from others because I grew up imagining that we're all holding hands and we don't care what race another person is or anything. But then I talked to some other adults and they're like, no, it's pretty segregated if you look at workplaces, for example, or certain parts of the country. um Unfortunately, it is like there is a line that people draw between themselves. um so for example, I think the workplace is a great example. I've heard stories where people would really only hang with people of their same race, or they would eat with people who look like them, for example. But I don't think that is the case everywhere, not yet, and hopefully never. I also do think it's a thing about time as well, because like I always remember my dad telling me about how where he grew up, there were he's obviously Chinese Malaysian is what I'd say. But he grew up with a lot of other Malay neighbors as well. So you have Chinese neighbors and Malay neighbors, um, and growing up, there are things that happen, um, racial tensions sometimes growing up. But as far as he and his friends were concerned, like, or his neighbors, like, it's just like they were together. They were united. They didn't, and and even in school, you would have Malays playing with Indians, with Chinese, and it wasn't really a thing. Like, at least in my classroom, you didn't have anyone purposely excluding someone because they were a different race. You would obviously have people gravitating towards each other because they share the same language, for example, or similar cultural quirks or whatever, um, which I think is normal and okay. But I don't think, at least in my classroom, you didn't have anyone, being racist, because it's kind of dumb to be racist in a country like that. And we were young, so I don't know how it is now. I don't know how it is in a workplace because I've never worked professionally at home. But yeah.
I think that's a really interesting point, that we definitely have a different perspective when we're children, because
Yeah,
why would we think any differently? We're obviously, the UK is also very multicultural. We have people from all over the world, and I had, um growing up in class, it was very mixed. It was very mixed. And you don't think about that. You don't think, why would you treat anyone any differently? Because
exactly.
at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We're all born in this planet. We're all figuring this thing out together.
Yeah,
And
everyone's growing up. You pee in your
yeah,
bed, so does the other person.
so moving, going to the side a little bit there, about the languages. So what are the prominent languages in Malaysia?
So the official language is Malay. I'd say English is the unofficial second language. Um, and obviously you have a lot of people speaking Chinese or Mandarin or Cantonese, which is it depends on where you go. So okay, I say Chinese. There are a lot of people who disagree with using Chinese as a name for the language. Um, Obviously, there's a lot of people who speak Mandarin, and depending on which cities you go to, at least in Kuala Lumpur, you have a lot of Chinese who speak Cantonese as well. If you
Mhm.
go up to Penang, which is north, really close to Thailand, you'll have more people speaking Hokkien, I think. So like different dialects of different Chinese dialects, but obviously Mandarin. And most of the Indians would speak Tamil as well, because as you know, India has a crazy amount of languages, but the
Is that
Indians are in Malaysia.
Sorry, is that so? The Indian immigration was predominantly from the south. Am I correct in saying that? The south of India?
I I embarrassingly always mix it up. I asked someone about 2 weeks ago who told me where like north or south India. But I don't remember, honestly. I don't. So I
But the Chinese immigration, is that so? Is I'm presuming mainland China mostly, uh,
yeah, yeah.
but for we came from all parts of China.
I don't think so. Just because simply going off on the language, right? Because uh I assume the Cantonese came from Canton or like Guangdong, the province. Um, I know my ancestors came from that area, not necessarily from Guangdong, the province, but at least Guangdong and slash or the areas around it. But China's big, and I don't think I might be wrong, but I don't believe we came from all over the country back then. But it was a while back. Or like zaman dulu, as we'll say in Malay. Um, like my parents were born in Malaysia. My great grandparents were born in China, so I think that's kind
Great
of
grandparents.
yeah.
Yeah, so I was that brought to mind. Are you do you learn much about the immigration in school, the history of the immigration of Malaysia in the school?
I didn't, but that might be because I went into the British curriculum when I was like I didn't fully finish the Malaysian curriculum. So
Hmm.
maybe they taught it in secondary school in as part of that syllabus, but I wouldn't know. But I didn't. So I
So
don't.
you did GCSEs and A levels.
Yeah, well, yeah, GCSEs or IGCSEs because
I G.
international.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't do my A levels. I did IB. But yeah, but we do have A levels in school
Yeah.
if you want to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's another point. Obviously, that at some point Malaysia was colonized by the British and the Dutch as well,
Yes, and the Japanese.
and the Japanese.
Yeah, during World War Two, that was a. Oh, well, was it World War Two? Forget I said that. I don't know when. But the Japanese definitely did do their stuff here. Not very nice stuff. Um, but yeah, definitely, we're still a Commonwealth country. And you still, I mean, obviously, we do a lot of us. There are a lot of schools that have the British curriculum. We do IGCSE, so the British still have their influence here. Even in our language, the words that we use, the way that we speak, there's some. You can see the link, and it hasn't been that long ago. It's only been about I don't remember 80 or so years since we gained independence from the British. And the Dutch, we have a city south, I think, of Kuala Lumpur called Malacca. And had that when you go to the city, you see a lot of Dutch influences
Mhm.
and even in the culture. And I I think the Portuguese as well for a bit. Yes, the Portuguese because we have certain words in Malay that are similar to certain words in Portuguese, and I don't remember which words, but I know for sure. I read about it, and I thought it was pretty interesting.
Mm.
Yeah.
And in terms of your personal language abilities, so English is your first language,
Yes.
and how well can you speak Mandarin or Malay?
Okay, so you want me to explain how bad I am at being Malaysian? Well, yes, like you said, English is my first language, and it is also my strongest language. I know a little bit. I know a bit of everything. I know a bit of Malay. I know a bit of Chinese, like Mandarin and Cantonese, but not well at all. Like I can't. Like I would say I'm very lower intermediate for Malay because Malay was my first second language. I think. I don't know. The lines get a little blurry when I go like when I think about how I was really young because obviously I would have, relatives around me speaking Mandarin or Cantonese, and and I guess in a way that you could consider that as a second language just purely by immersion. Um, but definitely Malay it's mandatory to learn Malay. Um, being in Malaysia, obviously, because the official language, and so in school, right from the start, we would have Malay classes. So Malay and Chinese, second and third languages, and then after that, my foreign language after that would have been French. And I'd say if I had to rank it now, it would be like English, like fluent, obviously, hopefully. Doesn't feel like it sometimes. Um, and French being my strongest second language, and then Malay, and then Chinese. And I definitely love to be more competent in Chinese because that's, for obvious reasons. Yeah.
But everyone in your family speaks English.
Yes, yes, for sure. Because that's what we speak at home. Well, my parents, they speak Cantonese between themselves, but when the entire family communicates, it's in English.
Mm.
Yeah.
So that was where we actually met. We recently met at a Mundolingo event, it's called, in Montreal, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, it's a language exchange event. We I'm going there to I go there to speak to people in Spanish and also trying to practice my French. But obviously, when we met, we just ended up talking English. Um, and I think it's really amazing here how, again, there's also so many different languages, so much influence here in Montreal. Um, but yeah, we definitely need to put in some more work into learning our French here.
Yes, definitely. But yeah, like you said, Montreal and languages. I think are a great way to connect with people, and it's a way that I've been connecting. I've gotten to connect with lots of people in the past few years. And it's a thing that we love to talk about, me and my best friends as well, and to find like similarities. For example, my one of my best friends, she speaks Arabic, right? And we were talking about one time about languages, and we were very delighted to find out that there were similarities between Malay and Arabic. Not a huge amount, right? Like if I knew Malay, I wouldn't know Arabic, but there was some words that were pretty much the same, and we were going crazy, and it was also why I was able to learn the Arabic numbers from 1 to 10 pretty easily because it had links to the Malay days. So that was interesting. But yeah, it's like yeah.
Yeah. So I think part of the reason that maybe you haven't learned so much French is that you went to McGill, right? The English university here in Montreal.
Yeah, I did. It's English. It's bilingual, so all of the communications that come from admin is in both French and English, but the classes are conducted in English unless you take a French course. And student clubs, a lot of things they run in English. It's not to say that you won't encounter French because you will, and there are a lot of French nationals as well here, and of course lots of Quebecois, and they speak French. But you could definitely, let's say you could definitely go through your entire degree in McGill without really knowing French, and I know people who do. Yeah.
I think not only that, but you can go your whole time living in Montreal without learning French. You know, there are
Yes,
people.
but yeah, go ahead.
One should learn. One should learn. I think it's definitely something out of respect. I do see that if we go and move to a place where they speak another language, we should do our very best to learn that language, especially if we consider it to be our future home for the rest of our lives.
Hmm.
But one could live in Montreal without learning a word of French.
So we should be conducting this interview in French from now on. So, no,
I know,
but
I know
okay,
we're not there. I know we're not there. Maybe in a year, maybe.
maybe it's possible, but but we'll see. But no, I want to say like yes, you could live in Montreal not knowing French, but besides the respect thing, I also think that you really only be living in 50% of Montreal, and that is both like literally like geographically and also culturally and just living in all aspects really because I mean for one I don't know if you've seen the map of the like distribution of languages in Montreal or at least for French and English, but it's almost a pretty solid like distinction between the English speaking left side of the island and the French speaking right side of the island, with downtown being a huge mix. Um, but 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 I read somewhere how someone was saying that you won't be living like you won't fully be living in a city, and I do agree. Knowing English just because you just won't be able to engage with the things that are happening in Montreal. You know, events happen in there. It's bilingual, as we said, like it's French and English, but there's some things that are really primarily in French. Um, and like for example, street signs. I don't know if you can really drive without knowing at least a bit of French because they're definitely only in French.
Mhm.
Um, but or like you go to the store and you want to ask a question or you want to find something and you can't because you only speak English. Or you go out to restaurants and sometimes you have a French menu and you scan a QR code if for the English menu, for example, or that's if you're lucky. Um, yeah, I had something and I forgot about it, but
No, I think it is really interesting what we've got onto here, that there is this big something that I had no idea how strong this idea of Quebec culture is, Quebecois culture. Um, that we just don't have any. I don't know how much you knew about it before you arrived, but I just imagine Quebec is another part of Canada, and I didn't realize I had some friends from smaller towns that I met in Australia, and we talked a little bit about it, but it's really hard to understand that until you get here, that there is this strong sense of identity. I have a friend who who doesn't consider herself Canadian. She considers herself Quebecois.
oh really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it is really interesting for me to see, and I think obviously it's not something that we are ever going to be able to understand. I don't think you can really understand something like that without being from that place. The
Mhm.
same the same as any independence movement, be that Scotland from the UK or Catalonia from the rest of Spain.
Or Texas from the US.
No, I think they're pretty proudly Yankees.
Hmm.
But yeah, it is really interesting to see, and I think you do see a hell of a lot of European influence here in Montreal. And Montreal itself functions very differently from the rest of Quebec. I don't know how much you've seen of Quebec. I don't know if you've been out of the city. Personally, I haven't.
Mhm.
But from my understanding, and we were talking about this the other day as well, when you do leave the city, the level of English drops a lot. And I think the further you go away from Montreal or the bigger cities, even more. My friend told me, I don't know if I'm misquoting her exactly, that, and I told you this the other day, I don't know how true it is, that it is illegal to teach English in school. I don't know exactly how true that is or how I might have misinterpreted that.
I mean,
But
the word illegal is a very strong word to use,
it is
right?
a very strong word, and that was what shook me when she told me. I would like to record an episode with her when she comes back, so I'll ask her more about that there. But I think I understand that they want to keep this sense of identity, and they don't feel like that they fit. Some of them don't feel like they fit in with the rest of Canada.
Hmm. Yeah, even in immigration, right, or anything government related, when you see a web page or you read a web page on Canada's official website, it usually explains some process, and then they say, if you are from Quebec, blah 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 blah, because there's always a different set of rules. But also, what I don't think a lot of people realize is that the official language here is French only. Like, it's not French and English. Like, the official language is French. Canada is
Then it's a
bilingual.
problem.
Yeah, yeah. Like, we're not bilingual. We're technically French. It's only Canada that's and like coming here is when I learned a lot about how Canada works and how provinces have a lot of power and they're able to be very different from each other, like the provinces. But what you said was pretty funny because it's true, right? It's like Quebec is kind of different from Canada, but within Quebec, Montreal itself is also pretty different from Quebec, and that causes a lot of tensions on a political side, right? Because yeah, I'm not gonna go into that, but yeah, language. Like Montreal is just different from Quebec. I'd say it's sufficiently different from Quebec.
Hmm. Hmm. And it is a beautiful city. It is a very special place.
Hmm.
Do you see this as your permanent home? Is that your plan?
Uh, for the time being, yes. I love it. It might have been It's one of my favorite cities. I can't really place myself too far into the future because for one, I'm 22, and also I just can't. And when people ask me, how do you imagine yourself 5 years into the future? The only things I can think of is, I still have all four limbs. I'm like, alive. But if you're asking me about where or what I'll be doing, couldn't really tell you. I just hope that I'm, stable and comfortable. But like 4 years ago or 5 years ago, I wouldn't have known. I didn't even think about McGill or Montreal or anything. Like, yeah, literally 5 years ago, I was not. I could
Canada?
not. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about Canada. Like 5 years, 2019, I was still in high school. Um, and yeah, I mean, like I knew I was gonna go to college, but I couldn't envision Canada. Okay, I gotta tell you, 5 years ago, Canada was in my head. The way I thought about Canada was just, that country that's near the US. That's all I thought. And here I am now. So I don't know where I'll be 5 years into the future, but hopefully in a good spot. Yeah, but yeah. What was your question?
I don't remember exactly, but let's go with that. So 5 years ago, you had no idea. You were in the end of high school, secondary school. And what was the process that led you to? Had you thought about leaving Malaysia before? Had you thought about studying in Malaysia? What made you choose Canada? What made you choose Montreal? What did you study?
Okay.
Why did you want to study it?
Yes, it's a good question. Also, I kind of need a bathroom break. Is that possible?
Yeah, no problem, no problem.
Okay, I'm gonna gather my thoughts so I can actually. Okay, I'll be back in about 2 minutes.
No problem.
Right, I'm back. Chug the Red Bull and get to go. Kidding, I don't do Red Bulls. Um, I love this place, by the way. It's my first time. It's like a little pod in a library. And I can control the lighting, and it's cool. It's soundproof, so that's great.
Yeah, I was gonna say I hadn't quite seen something like that before.
Yeah, I love it.
Did you have to reserve it, or you can just walk in?
No, I could just stroll in. And I got lucky because I've been here before. I've seen these pods. I've never been in one of them because it's always occupied during the school year. But it's summer now, so there's no one on campus. And it's raining, so no one's actually wanting to leave their house. I didn't, so I got lucky.
Nice.
But to answer your question, so I don't know. Are you gonna? So I was just curious. I was like pissing, and I was like, "Are you gonna edit that pause out?" I don't know.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I will.
okay, okay. Anyway, I don't know if I told you this, but 5 years ago I wasn't in Malaysia. Like I didn't do my high school. Well, I did most of my high school. I did secondary school in Malaysia, and I finished off my high school doing IB in Phuket, Thailand. So instead of doing A levels, instead of continuing with A levels, I went to do IB in Phuket. Um, and so that was when I going back to when I talked about how I had to first explain the culture in Malaysia and the language was in Phuket because it was the first time I was in a studying outside of the country, and that's when I met all these people from everywhere, people who were from Asia, people who weren't from Asia. And so I was there studying. College application time came, and I was talking with the counselors, thinking about different schools. I thought about the UK at some point, but I was like, I don't really know what I wanted to study, and I know the way it works in the UK, at least for universities, there is that you have to decide what you want to do, and you get accepted based on the program that you've chosen. And if you don't want to do that, you can't change majors, right? That's what I understand. Um, and also it's conditional. Um, and so I was like, okay, the US seems great. I mean, I kind of wanted to go to a place that was pretty different from what I knew growing up because I wanted to explore different places, to meet different people, uh, learn about different cultures, have new experiences. And so I was thinking a little further away than back at home. Um, and so I applied to a bunch of universities in the US, and I was really only thinking about the US because the UK was out of the picture. And then one day, my mom made a comment to me. She was like, "You should consider Canada." Like Canada, what is there in Canada? Maple leaves. That's like literally all I knew about Canada. Like I speak English. That's cool. And she's like, they have some pretty good universities over there. And I was like, okay, like I've never heard of any of them. I've heard of UBC, I guess, kind of, but that's it. I've never heard of McGill or anything. And she's like, you should apply. I'm like, okay, great. So I'll apply. And I applied like a day before the deadline or something in January. I was lucky because McGill's application was pretty easy. You just had to fill out a form. They don't ask you to write any essays like the US does, or I don't remember. Does the UK require you? Yeah, they do. They make you write personal
Personal statement.
statements.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, I had friends who were applying to the UK, and they're like, "Oh, can you read mine for me?" And I read theirs, and I'm like, "God, I'm so glad I didn't have to write that. I just don't like doing it."
I didn't do it.
Oh, you didn't? Well, if you had done it now, you could have just chat GPT'd it. But
They're actually changing it now. I think they're asking like three questions or something instead of the personal statement.
okay, more of like short answer questions, sort of. Okay, it's a little better, I
Um,
think. Yeah. So yeah, and I got accepted, and that's how I ended up here, kind of.
so you hadn't chosen your major before you arrived.
No, you didn't have to. I didn't have to. All you had to do was just choose whether you want to study science or art. Well, like it's through faculty, so you had to decide which faculty you would apply to. Because
Yeah.
in McGill we have like arts faculty, science faculty, medicine, um, engineering. So I got into arts, and the arts is the biggest faculty, so you could choose whatever major you wanted. Just take the class, make sure you pass, or get a certain score, and yeah. So I really decided what I wanted to study. Well, okay, I going into it, I had decided on economics, but I had gone to university thinking economics and psychology, and then I changed to economics and statistics, and that's where I'm at now.
Hmm. Why did you decide to change to the statistics side rather than the psychology side?
So I just want to say I love psychology. I still do. My love for it began in IB when I took a psych when one of my subjects was psychology, and that made me decide like, okay, I want to do psychology. Econ as well. I had never studied econ until the 2 years before I came to university, but I had an amazing teacher, Mr. Turnbull, and he made me decide to study economics. But then after my first year, I was like, okay, psychology is really fun. I still remember my social psychology class. I have this huge textbook, and that's the only textbook to date that I would willingly read on my free time, just purely because it's so interesting and so engaging. Um, but I was like, I thought about what I wanted to do, and I was gonna do okay. So I was gonna do honors economics. I wanted to do like perhaps a joint honors in economics and psychology. But then I looked further into what it entailed, and it made me think about really what that psychology major would bring me or what I could do with it. And I was like, it's really interesting, but I just don't really see much for me in my future if I continue with this psychology degree. Uh, like I didn't really want to do research, and research is a big thing in that field. Um, and I was like, ugh. I started thinking about other options, and economics and statistics seems like a pretty good option. I had this when I was in economics. There's this economics student association, and they also have this mentorship program where they connect first year students with non first year students, so they could ask them about things about courses and stuff like that. And I got matched with the honors economics advisor. Um, he's a student, but anyway, he did a joint honors, I think, in economics and mathematics. And so I was talking to him, and I was like, okay, it seems like a possible path for me. I didn't do mathematics because I'm not that great at maths. I'm terrible at maths, which is probably not a good thing to say as a statistics student. But I did end up with statistics. I actually, math is just terrible. My IB, I took a maths subject, and I didn't score high enough to get all of their credits transferred over to Miguel. So it was just a little sentence to explain how bad I am at math. But yeah, so maths and stats. Sorry, econ and stats. And now people are telling me that's a great combination. You should find a job in no time. But as of now, I'm still searching, so still getting rejection. So I don't know. I don't know what's happening with that.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. I think we have very similar interests because for my A levels I took economics, psychology, and maths.
Right. Dude,
I,
that's
I
okay.
I did really badly. I came out with a C in economics, D in psychology, E in maths.
Ooh, okay, so it's like a little progression.
But
D-
I love all of those subjects. I just was not there. I wasn't there at the end of school to study. I was done with school
Mhm.
by the time I finished. But
And
they also
grades don't correlate perfectly with interest or passion in a subject.
no, and I think that the traditional education system at some points for a lot of us can feel very suffocating. It's very intense, and I just don't think is as dynamic as it could be, especially in the UK. I think there's so much stress and pressure, a lot of emphasis put on going to university. I think my school was reasonably good in terms of they had brought up other options, and they tried to nurture us and make us aware of the other options, tried to get us using our time productively to prepare.
Mhm.
But when I was just at the point I was just done, and I wasn't studying. Um, I just wasn't present. But I love economics. I love psychology as well. I think they're very interesting and important subjects. So it's funny the combination, and we were just talking about this before as well
Yeah.
about behavioral economics. Did you
Yes.
do any modules on behavioral economics?
Unfortunately not. There is a course in McGill for behavioral economics, and I've had my eyes set on it, for all these years. But in the end, I kind of went a route of like, okay, which subject would be great for me in terms of career stuff, or like when you look at my transcript, or you see like, oh, you took this course, or courses that would work well with my statistics degree, because there are some courses that I took where there were overlapping knowledge, or I could like pull my knowledge from my stats course and go like, oh, I know this, because I did more econometrics focused courses. um, so I ended up not doing a behavioral economics course. I actually considered, well, yeah, obviously when I was doing economics and psychology, I figured behavioral economics was the my goal, because it's like, that's like the points of the triangle. Um, I still think, just like psychology, I think would be an interesting thing to learn about and to engage with on my own free time. But I'm not really thinking about that now.
Mhm. I will put that as a public recommendation. Everyone should go and read Freakonomics. Amazing book, really amazing book, and it talks about um, the correlations between normal things, and it's economics explained in a really simple way that can be applied to more subjects, to a greater perspective on life. So I would recommend anyone checks out Freakonomics. But where do you feel? So I'll ask you on the podcast, macro, micro.
um, Definitely without question macro. Okay, I can question like 1%, but I've taken micro courses that made me really question me doing an economics degree, and then after that I took a macro course, and I was like, okay, this seems like I could like breathe a little bit more in that course, right? Because it's not just uh, production functions and Greek letters and math. It was like actual connections to real life things. I took a course with Julian Carragasian, great prof, on international. Well, the title of the course was International Finance, I think, but really it was just international macro, and it went into like exchange rates, um, uh, interest rates, and stuff like that. It's really like economics between countries, right? And I thought that was really interesting. So that might be something that I would be interested in exploring in terms of my future. Definitely macro.
So can you explain the
Uh,
difference between macro and micro?
oh yeah, I could do that for sure. I mean, as the names suggest, microeconomics, you're sort of taking a magnifying glass and looking at a within firm process, right? I mean, for example, you have. I mean, the simple idea of scarcity in economics, or like how to allocate resources in an efficient way, right? Efficiency versus equity. These are all questions that you examine and you try to answer in microeconomics. So you would probably look at a firm, look at their production function, look at the resources that they have, look at what they want to do with that resource, and figure out how to allocate those resources given a specific constraint, like workers that you have, or wages that you have to pay to workers, or resources that you have, or even in the situation in the geography that you're in, are is it feasible to allocate this this much resources to trying to pull water from this lake, where there could be a better way, or should you be spending this much money or on this decision, or like how much should I pay my workers? How much should I pay my workers, or how many workers should I have for this amount of wage? These are all like microeconomic stuff, right? But for macroeconomics, is you're zooming out and you think about, for example, international trade. So I think that's part of macroeconomics too. Tariffs and trade or taxes. How much tax should you put on cigarettes, for example, or how much tariffs should you put on for against this country? You learn about a lot about U.S. and China relate. You could learn a lot about U.S.-China relations economically. You could learn about Germany and its role in Greece going bankrupt, and the EU. I mean, even the EU itself is an interesting case. This whole like monetary unions and things like that. So it's pretty different micro and macro, I'd say. And
Mhm.
that's also like the international development side of economics that I think is kind of tied to. It could be related to micro. It could be related to macro. It's a little different, I'd say. It's also, I guess, it's like another branch of economics.
Yeah, 100%. The both sides are very interesting to me, and
Mhm.
both sides have their things. Um, I couldn't tell you which I prefer, but did you always feel that way about micro? Like that was always what interested you more, or that started to develop more when you started doing your course?
Yeah, so I started learning about economics in 2018, right, for my IB course, and the usual progression of or the usual way economics is structured in high school is that you have about four different parts. You have the first one being micro, then macro, and then some, I guess, trade and development. Um, and also it always starts off very dry for me because we had to slug through the micro portion. I mean, it's important stuff to know, and for sure, because you learn about basic economic concepts. But I've always felt more interested when we got to the macro part, and that's where I could really link what I know to things in real life. And then when I took a international development course earlier this year, my final semester, that was when I was like, oh, actually, developmental economics is actually interesting, and it might be something that I would want to explore further. Because previously, before that, it had just been micro and macro for me,
Mhm.
and I would just lump trade into macro. I know it's not exactly the same thing, but for me, it's more similar. Yeah.
So, if you could do anything with your knowledge of economics, what would you focus on? What is it that really interests you? What did you do your thesis on, for example?
Oh, I didn't have to do a thesis,
Okay.
thankfully. Um, well, okay, there are two aspects, right, to this question about like my future, my career. Is that like one side is where the money is, and the other side is like what do I actually want to do in the world? And I think if I think about the part about uh doing something useful in the world, it will definitely be developmental economics. Um, because I just think there's just so much that can be done in so many places that you could do good work in. Obviously, it tends to be developmenting countries. What did I just? I don't know what I just said. Developing countries. That's also what we focus most on in our course. I don't think I'm honestly that interested in doing developmental economics in developed countries. Of course, there's work that you could do there, but I'm more interested in the things that you could do elsewhere in the world, because I think you could just make people's lives so much better. And this is kind of what we study, why we study is because you learn things to make the world a better place. At least that's why I do it. Um, and that's where I would like to explore being able to use my knowledge. And on the other side, if you think about money and where the money is, I think definitely the finance side of it, especially now, with all the training that's going on, or even AI. AI's in the past, what, 1, 2 years, I think it's really shaken a lot of things. It's shaken the entire ground, and now we're getting all sorts of articles, posts about how fast AI is developing. And I feel like that it could change the economic field in a lot of ways. I mean, it changes everything, but
Hmm.
talking about economics right now. And I assume that it would change the financial economic field a lot as well. I don't quite know how, um, but yeah.
Are there any specific countries that you are interested in working in?
Not really at the moment. For my economics course, we had to pick a country where we would design a hypothetical experiment in. And my group and we picked Bolivia because of the labor market over there, and the informal market over there. It has a huge informal market. So that was interesting, but I'm not too picky about where. I think it'll be cool to work with like a international organization uh, that does work in countries. I don't know. I don't have a yeah.
Just to sidetrack a little bit there, I have visited Bolivia myself, and that was probably, I think, is the country that is the most difficult to use card in that I've visited. Everything is cash there.
Wow.
Out, outside of maybe in La Paz and what's the other city? Outside of the big cities, it is really difficult. Everything is cash. Everything is cash. In Colombia as well, to an extent, but in Bolivia, they still have a lot of corruption, unfortunately.
Hmm.
And their biggest markets, from what I was told, is when I was doing a walking tour of the city, unfortunately, people and drugs, still two predominant markets. What they what is really sad for me is they have such a beautiful country. Bolivia is stunning. It has such a wide range of nature and scenery, and it is growing. The tourism industry is growing. Again, another recommendation: if you go to South America.
Sorry, I don't know. I the audio cut off or something. I can't hear you.
Now, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The
I think
battery died.
yeah, the battery died.
Uh,
Technical problems. Where did you hear up to? Sorry.
I think you were saying you would really recommend Bolivia.
100%. 100%. I think it's a beautiful country, amazing people, really friendly. Um, the whole of South America is like that. But yeah, and I think the industry is growing. But it was so nice to visit a country where there aren't as many tourists necessarily. But at the same time, it's really sad to see a developing country like that with so much potential that the people just don't know. People just don't know, and people will always go to the places that people speak about.
Mhm.
Everyone goes to Colombia and Argentina and Brazil because everyone talks about those countries to visit.
Mhm.
Peru, and you have this tiny little landlocked country with an amazing history. Um, Sad history too, very sad, with so much to offer. And I think it is another one of those cases of a country that, yeah, like I say, has so much potential, but so many things holding it back at the same time.
Yes, it's the way humans work, right? They flock to wherever people tell them to go.
Yeah, we are sheep to some extent,
Hmm.
but I think it is also it's definitely a safety thing. When we hear about personal experiences, we hear about good experiences, then we're more inclined to go and visit. We're more inclined to check it out.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And social media hasn't helped. Like, I mean, social media has done a lot to make people more sheep-like, let's say.
Yes and no. Yes and no.
No?
I think I definitely agree in the sense of, well, we are obviously influenced by the influences that we watch, but at the same time, if it does mean that all of these new places are opened up to us, I think people do naturally start to disperse. So even if we are following as a herd these influences, the because there is so much content out there, we start to just naturally drift away, explore another place,
Mhm,
see this content about this place. Okay, I want to go here now. I want to go there now, you know? So I
mhm,
think in some ways, yes, maybe it just it's hard to say. I think maybe it takes away people's on no, it's really hard to say. What am I trying to say? It takes away people's own innate interest in traveling and makes them want to do it because other people do. It could be to do with that.
mhm,
But in some ways, it makes them do it and it makes them go and explore these places, which is one of the most important things we can do. We should go and learn about the world. We should go and explore all these places.
mhm, mhm.
So you spent your last few years in high school in Thailand. Was that the first time you lived outside of Malaysia, or had you had any other experiences like that?
No, that was the first time. I hadn't done much traveling before that. Only been to Malaysia, visited Singapore as a child, and then Phuket, Thailand, and that was the first time that I was actually living away from the country, living away from home actually. Well, I wasn't gone for the entire 1.5 years because it was so close to Malaysia that I would just fly back during semester breaks. Also because it was cheaper than having to stay at the boarding school during the holidays. So yeah, that was my first experience living elsewhere and away from home. And obviously now I'm living away from home, and so that was like the precursor. But it's also like people tell me it's like, oh, you've experienced living like away, like being independent. And I was like, I've lived away from home, but I wouldn't use the word independent because you were still in school. You had, house parents or whatever you call them. I can't remember what they called them. You didn't have to do your own laundry. You didn't have to like meals were provided in school. So it wasn't really that independent. So I really only started living independently and learning how to be independent and learning how to be an adult in Montreal.
Hmm.
Not
And
even
how,
Malaysia.
and how does it feel to be an adult?
Uh, there's no way to complicate to simply answer that, right? Like, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Yeah, I don't think I'll go back to being a child.
I don't think one can.
Yeah, even if you wanted to. Maybe in the future you might discover some things. If someone discovers, a way to turn back time, I wouldn't go back. exactly, but I would appreciate the chance to change a few things, do a
Okay.
bit of to redo some things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Interesting. Do you think that time travel is something that we might see in our lifetimes?
No, not in our lifetime. I don't think so.
No?
No, if it's even possible, I think it's pretty far away.
Do you think it is possible?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I don't know. I've thought about it. I don't know. I can't say. I like the movies, but I don't know if it's possible in real life. There's just so many implications if it's true, you know?
Yeah.
I if I had a superpower, it would be to manipulate time.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's what I'd choose.
In in what way?
In every way. I think the most useful use I'd have for it would be, well, it depends. At different points in my life, I would like that power for different reasons. For a while, I really wished that I had the ability to, don't you ever think like, oh, I wish I could say something to someone, but I just don't know how they react. With this power, you could find out how they react and then backtrack and decide for yourself like, okay, maybe it was a good idea to say this or maybe it wasn't, or like or you mess up and you're like, ah, shit, I missed the deadline for something, well, let me just like turn back time and not miss it. Or sometimes, yeah, those, or so when I was in high school, that was a big thing. I was like, I wish I could just do something and go back and like not say it or say it, to someone, whatever that is, to someone. It's a very specific instance that I'm thinking of, but I'm not gonna say it. Um, and then in the past year or past 2 years, when I think of time manipulation, what I really would have wanted was to just slow time down or stop time really, so that I could just take a breather for myself. Because there were some points in a year where things were just time was just flying by way too fast, and I just didn't feel like I had enough time to do anything or everything. And sometimes it's like, okay, I just want to sleep, or I just want some time to finish this assignment, or I want some time to just not do anything and just sit and stare into space. So time would be great for that. I feel like your mic died today. It died again. You have a third one?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a fourth one too. But I
Jeez.
hope this lasts the last sort of 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
I think I was first gonna say that everything you mentioned, I feel like, yeah, but it would just be too easy. But if you're gonna have a superpower, the whole point is to make it easy, right?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
But I think we can do a lot of those things that you mentioned there without having to manipulate time, you know? I think everything is relative and perspective. And in order to, like you say about um, turning the trying something out and turning it back, we can't do that specifically, but we can just try. We can just try and do it, and then we have an idea for how it might work out next time, or maybe we don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should do it. A conversation we were having the other day.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Oh, I was so in my head, I forgot about that. But yes, that's a very good relevance example.
Just that's just a reference to going up and talking to people at the event specifically, but it can be overwhelming. It can be overwhelming to do those things, to go and meet random and new people. You have to get over it as an immigrant. It's something that we have to overcome and just get on with. We have to meet people if we want to have some kind of social life, to feel to have a support circle, a support network, friends. It's really important.
Hmm.
But in terms of the other things, slowing time down, stopping the moment, yes, but at the same time, we just that is where it is so important to be present. So important to be present in, we're right here, right now. We're having a good time. I felt that it's been a little difficult um, here in Montreal. I want to enjoy the summer, but at the same time, I still have felt very much in my comfort zone. Having moved here after living in a small town in South America for 4 months, it was a big change to go back to a big city again. So that's something that personally I've been dealing with.
Hmm.
But it is really important to stay in the moment and to cherish the good times.
Yeah, that is possible, but it just takes a bit more work. Because having a superpower is kind of like a cheat, right? For something that you should be able to do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Since
like 100 years ago, or what, 200 years ago, people could imagine having superpowers, like flying powers, right? I'm sure someone has imagined it, and I mean, we kind of did it, not in the same way that you'd expect, but we can fly in huge, like metal, um, machines. So in the same way, I think like we can manipulate time, but just not like that, you know? It takes work, and it takes, yeah, like time is relative, as Einstein would say. Does he say that?
I
Someone said
couldn't
someone
couldn't
said
quote
that.
it.
But time is relative, you know? It's true. So we kind of can like manipulate time. Sorry, I just had a thought about all these time movies I watched. Um, some are really good. Some are really, really good. Like it makes you think about time in a way that you don't usually do.
Like which ones?
My favorites, one of my favorite shows is Dark. The
Mhm.
Netflix show is German. Have you watched it before?
No, but I've heard really good things.
Oh, it's amazing. It's incredible. It's really about time travel, but yeah, it's gonna blow your mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any others?
Uh, like really good time shows. I don't remember. Probably are some, but Dark is my favorite time travel like movie slash show. I haven't really watched that many, to be honest. I mean,
I don't
what you consider? Have you watched Interstellar?
know.
You
That's
haven't?
no, but that I was about to tell you other movies that I haven't watched, and even crazier that I haven't seen it. But that
Like what?
has well, I was about to say I've never
If you,
seen Back to the Future. Yeah,
and
no.
neither have I, so no
Okay,
judgment for me.
okay.
You might need to get your fourth mic now.
Yes, no,
Yeah.
yes. No.
Yes.
I'm gonna charge all of these up ready for next time. No technical problems. Interstellar has Matthew McConaughey, no?
Yes, it does. And Anne Hathaway and Michael Caine.
Couldn't put my finger on him.
You don't know Michael Caine?
Let me have a look.
He's like
Michael.
the Hollywood guy to go to for his Cockney accent, I think. I think it's Cockney.
Yeah, I think I'm really bad with famous movie stars,
Mm,
famous actors and whatnot.
hmm. But it's an incredible movie. It's Christopher Nolan. It's not a time travel movie. There's like one scene with some like time aspects. One-ish scene, but it's a great movie. I love it. It's one of my top few movies as well.
Okay, maybe I'll watch it this weekend. I struggle with movies, but Another
More than
movie.
shows?
I love shows. I can nowadays I don't watch so many shows, but for me, I used to love 20-minute or 40-minute shows. Yeah, I can just
So movie's too long. Is that what it is?
yeah.
Yeah, well,
Our
I,
with the PlayStation generation, we fried our brains with our attention spans.
yes. Yes. That's a whole discussion to be had. But sorry to report, but Interstellar's 3 hours long.
Yeah, yeah. You say that, but my favorite movie is The Wolf of Wall Street.
I haven't watched that one yet.
Oh, okay. You need to get on that.
Got to.
That
Yeah.
is another McConaughey. He's not in there for much, but
Mhm.
well worth the watch. Well worth the watch.
Leonardo DiCaprio as well.
Yes, and Jonah Hill,
Hmm. Margot Robbie?
Margot Robbie,
Wow, lots of famous
big
names.
name.
Yeah.
It's a big film. I'm surprised you haven't seen that.
Do you know though? You know the fun
Economic.
fact about? Yeah. Do you know the links to Malaysia? Kind of.
No.
So there's this guy called Jolo, Jholow. I'm pretty sure he's Malaysian. Like, there's no way I mixed that up. Yeah, he's Malaysian and he's currently missing in action. He's currently hiding. Actually, is the true word. Because Interpol would have his ass or someone else. I don't know. But I think he funded the movie, or he funded a lot of the movie. He of the Wolf of Wall Street, and he would like throw insane parties, and you see pictures of him with Leonardo DiCaprio, and all that money that was coming was not coming from him. He was basically stealing it from the government. I mean, if you really want to get into it, the prime minister was stealing from the government, but whatever. Um, so yeah, he's currently hiding. But
I
it's just a
think
bit ironic that it was the Wolf of Wall Street that he was funding, and this whole thing happened.
but now you mention that, I think I have heard something along those lines. But he still fled the country in 2022.
Really, that
Okay.
recently? I thought
Yeah,
it was been a while.
maybe that's just when the article was. I don't know. Okay, so to finish up here, I have 3 questions for you.
Okay, I'll keep the answers short. Try to.
You don't know, you can make them as long as you want. Hopefully, it's before the microphone dies. Okay, so I'll give you all 3 at once, and you can decide how you want to answer them.
Okay.
So the question from my last guest, and it was something that you mentioned, if you had a chance to change something in your life, what would it be? That's
Okay.
that's the first one. The next one is, I would like you to give me a question to ask the next guest. So have a think about that. And the other one is a message that you would like to give people in, I say your language, obviously your language is English. If you do have a message that you might want to give in French or Mandarin or Malay, you can also give something that might be cool. But however you want to answer those questions.
Okay. Dang, I gotta think about this. It might take me a bit of a hot minute to think, to be honest.
No problem.
Okay, I think I've got it.
You got it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So your first question, that's not a simple answer. So you asked me what I would change if, or the previous, is that the question that your previous, okay, what I would change if I could in my life? I don't think there's a singular thing that I would change because I, now that I'm thinking about it, I've gone through most of my life, not regretting things because I definitely wanted to make it a point not to regret things.
Mhm.
But there was something that happened, I think last year, that was like, if I had a regret, this might be considered a regret. I can't believe I don't remember what it is anymore. But what my answer was gonna be was that there's not one singular thing that I would change, but there's a lot of small things that I definitely would have changed. And it could be something as small as, I wish I didn't watch that extra episode before I went to sleep because I missed. I would, bro, I'm terrible at stopping myself. I would maybe start watching an episode at 10 p.m. and then go to bed at like 4 or 5 a.m. because I just could not stop. That's something I would change. Or like, oh, I wish I didn't like eat and cook that extra piece of thing because now I'm so full, but I can't. I have to finish this. Or, I wish I had studied a little bit harder for this course because I was 1 mark off. It's just like a bunch of really, really small things. But I guess it's a good thing, thankfully, that I haven't had something so terrible happen that I'm like, I wish I had never did this thing. Um, I think, but I think a common theme for all of these small little things is that what it really boils down to is that if I could do something a little differently, it would be I wish I was a little better at listening to myself, or at least listening to the more rational side of me.
Mhm.
That would be my answer. There you go.
It's a good
Um,
answer. It's a
yeah,
good answer.
thanks. I
And
kind of
I think what you were saying like comes back into it though. I think that's exactly the time travel power. Um, about just
always in the
going
back
back.
of my head.
But it's all about, it's a learning experience, this life, and we're gonna make these silly mistakes. Maybe we're gonna make them over and over again. Maybe we're gonna make them 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times every day for 10 years. But at the end of the day, hopefully we learn from them and we change our habits. And that's the important part, that we come out the other side.
Well spoken, sir.
Thank you.
Um, Second question time. Oh, a question for the next person. I had like thought of a bunch of different questions, but I think what I've decided is, whoever the next person may be, what what was your first impression of Ben when you first met him? Or if it's someone that you've known for a while now or long enough, what's your favorite memory with him?
Okay. Okay.
And the third thing, um, I've decided to reach in, really dig deep and show you a little bit of Malay, a little bit that I know.
Okay.
And what I will say is, saya rindu Malaysia, and saya nak makan roti canai kerana saya suka roti canai banyak-banyak. Yeah, there you go.
Can you tell me what that means and what that means to you?
Sure. I mean, okay, the first thing well, I thought it was kind of funny to use that word, but the first sentence I said was, I miss Malaysia. I think it's funny because I, first of all, I think it's funny that I remember the word miss in Malay because I've just, like, every year my grasp of the language just goes like lower and lower because I don't practice it. But for some reason, I remember that, and it's just, we talked about missing at the start of this podcast. So I thought it's funny to use that. But the second thing I said, which is true, is that I miss. No, I said I want to eat roti canai, which is a dish in Malaysia, one of my favorite dishes. Oh God, I love that. That would be something that I miss for sure. That's not something I can make. I can tell you, it's not crazy. It's not difficult, but I can't do it. And I said I want to eat roti canai because I like it a lot, and hopefully I didn't butcher the language. Yeah.
Nice,
I didn't
man.
say that. I'm just saying yeah.
No, well, thank you so much. I don't know if we're gonna have anyone listening who speaks Malay, but if they do, give some
Maybe
feedback on them.
your podcast might take off, and like you might have someone from Malaysia tuning in at some point.
And they'll write a comment. You spoke perfectly.
No, that's a bit too far. I don't think that will happen.
Well, I think that was a really nice message and a really nice way to finish off today. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed this chat that we have. This is more than we've actually spoken in person. So it's been really cool to get to know you a lot more as well. And I really, really have enjoyed this today.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I enjoyed it. And like you said, we talked a lot, and it's also more than I thought I was able to talk, because right before this you were like, oh, it's gonna last about 1.5 hours. I don't know how long it's been, but I think I spoke more than I was. Honestly, I was a little nervous before this. I was like, okay, it feels like an interview, but it's nice talking to you. You ask good questions, and yeah, it's a blast. Or I
Yes.
don't know what they say. You got to give me a phrase in a British phrase. They say like it's what would someone say?
What would someone say? What would
Yeah,
someone say?
like an equivalent of like it's been a blast, or it's a good, it's good or something.
Um, it was man, you're putting me on the spot here.
You put me on the spot earlier. You've been
I
putting me
know.
on the spot for the entire podcast.
That's half the fun of it, eh?
It went swimmingly.
It went swimmingly.
I don't know.
We would say that, but more ironically. But I guess because we're saying it ironically, it's kind of unironic. It's just this. We say things. We say things ironically, which turn out to be unironically.
Well, irony is like one of your languages, really.
And satire and sarcasm.
Love that.
Well, no, but what would we say?
It's been an absolute pleasure.
I think you put it perfectly there. It's been an absolute pleasure. Been delightful.
Delightful.
But I don't know. I'm gonna have to see if I can think of some more
Been a hoot.
That one, no. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for listening today. This has been Backpacks and Stories, episode 2 with Nigel. I hope you have a lovely weekend.